I used to be very angry, and I used that resulting energy to exercise. But now I am so much more peaceful, but I don't have as much energy. How can I get more energy?
If you were really, really peaceful to the core, you'd have 10 times more energy than you ever got from your anger. You know how we said that anger was a better thing than depression? Well, anger is higher level of energy, and people can focus on it, and you can produce short-term energy. But if you want great energy, you can be peaceful and change your belief that energy is giving you anger, or anger is giving you energy. Anger, it drains energy. You're sucking energy out of yourself. You could, if you were at total peace, you could run farther and faster. When runners run, long distance race, the marathoners, they get into what they call the zone, and where they're just blissful, and they run, and they don't feel any pain in their body. They run that way. So that's a far better, far more sustaining energy than the anger.
Isn't fear also the lack of faith?
It could be. Faith is a word that's unfortunately been misused. Faith, the word pistos in Greek means belief, faith, and trust. It means all three of those things. And I would put them in that order. You can have beliefs, and your beliefs create your life experience. But faith is stronger than a mere belief. It's a very fixed, strong thing. But trust is even greater than faith. Trust is the absolute knowing that no matter what happens, things will work out. And anger is a result of, what the question was, anger they said?
It's fear, lack of faith.
Fear is the absence of love. If you go into a dark room, you can turn on the light switch, right? But if you go in a light room, can you turn on the dark switch? It just doesn't exist. Darkness is the absence of light. There's no power called darkness. There is a power called light. And there's no power called fear, but there is a power called love. But there is the absence of love. And that's basically what fear is. So the key is to switch yourself more and more to the side of the equation.
Either the lower energies or the higher energies can be huge motivators. I mean, you can be just as motivated to do something out of fear as you can out of love, and in fact, more often we are motivated out of fear. Our country at the moment is motivated out of fear. The median level, according to Abraham, between the two, the turning point is courage. Not faith yet, you're not all the way to faith, but courage. So if you are fearful of something and you can say, but I have the courage to move beyond this. I can take the step that takes me out of this fear step. I am strong enough to step out of fear. Then you are heading toward the more blissful states, which means that the cowardly lion was the hero of the Wizard of Oz. He was the one who wanted courage, because that really is the turning point for all of us. And if you find yourself motivated for 1 nanosecond by fear of anything, of the price of gas, of the price of food, of war, of terrorists, of anything that's being fed to you moment by moment by moment, the very best thing you can do for yourself and the entire world is to move yourself deliberately and specifically and intentionally to courage. I have the courage to be me and not to be motivated by such stuff.
One of the things that fear is used for by some people is to motivate other people through their fears. A group of terrorists came over to this country and crashed some planes into some buildings and killed 3,000 people. And the fear went to anger, and we needed something to lash out. But instead of, when we were attacked by the Japanese in the Second World War, we had a person who understood human nature, and he said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And we didn't. And we went, okay, we got to do this. And we did it. We keep repeating that idea where we are terrified of these little guys with turbans, a 6-foot Arab on dialysis, and we are so afraid of terrorists. We spend billions of dollars in counter-terrorism. We are afraid of terrorists because they killed 3,000 people. In the total of the last 5 years, 6 years since that happened, 5, is it? They've killed a total of a little over 3,000 people in this country. Now, there have been some outside the country. 3,000 people. Isn't that terrible? In 5 years, we lost 3,000 people? Terrible, terrible, terrible. Folks, we lose 750,000 people to the medical profession every year. 750,000. Those are the estimates of the people outside the profession. The estimates inside the profession are only 250,000. Are we afraid of them? No. We keep going. If I was Osama bin Laden and I wanted to do something to this country, I'd have my people trained as doctors.
Send them to medical school,
Send them to medical school, not to flight school.
Now, you better go easy on doctors. You may need one someday.
I love that. I love doctors. You know, the medical profession is a great profession, and more doctors are beginning to see that energy medicine is the way to go. But when the medical profession has literally been reduced to drug salesmen for the drug companies, because everything is handled with a drug. Doctors, by the way, because of the way the insurance is, don't have enough time. How long does a doctor spend with you when you go in? I can remember going in and talking to my doctor for half an hour. 7 minutes, someone said, okay, well, that's what it is. There's nobody to fault here. It's just one of the biggest problems that we have with our health is the food we eat. The food we eat. The packaged, processed food, the food with the chemicals in it. Another huge problem that we have with our medical system is the stress we're under. Stress is the number one cause of all diseases. Mayo Clinic says 80% of all diseases are stress-related. I think they're about 80% right. Stress is the big killer. And it's the cause of all of these habitual diseases that people have. And does stress come from the outside world? We think it does. It doesn't. It comes from the way we view the outside world. If we changed our thinking, not only would the medical profession get better, everything else would get better. The insurance companies, the whole ball of wax. So don't be motivated by fear. Fear is the worst motivator. Yeah, you know, if you see a snake, step aside and say, isn't that interesting? Don't step on him.
Don't sleep with him, right?
Don't sleep with him, right.
I think the answer to your question isn't fear the opposite of faith, is that fear should motivate you to have the faith to lift yourself out of fear, because God never intended you to be fearful, never for 1 minute. So you can exercise your faith to overcome your fear by simply saying, I don't choose to live in fear. I'm not going there. It's not where I want to be.
Fear is a natural part of our makeup. It's not unnatural. When you are in the jungle and a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you, fear is the absolute built-in reaction. And it's a warning thing. It's like a bell. It says ding-a-ling-a-ling.
It's an alarm clock.
It's
you
an
don't
alarm
keep
clock.
it ringing forever.
But our problem is that we're
Shut
afraid
it
of
off.
everything. And the alarm clock is going off and off, even subconsciously. We're sleeping at night and churning all the stuff we were afraid of in the day and keeping our blood pressure up. Literally, we are living more and more in a state of total fear. And it's a habit, and it takes, like anything else, a period of time to gradually work into a better and better place. So was the original question, is fear the opposite of faith?
Isn't fear also the lack of faith?
Lack of faith. I think if you had faith, which is one of those higher ones up there, you would reduce fear for sure. That much I would say, yes, you would reduce it. Not exactly an opposite. If love has no opposite, and fear isn't real, but fear is the absence of love.
But the faith has to be in yourself, to change your thinking from what you don't want to what you do want, using gratitude, affirmations, all of these, pivoting, all of these tools. This is what this is all about. Every question really has the same answer. What do you want?
For any doctors watching this program, there's only one set of people that are worse, and those are ministers. And I'm one of them.
Who pontificate.
Who pontificate about what didn't happen and myths and legends that just aren't true. They're not teaching. People who call themselves Christians are not teaching what Jesus taught. If they were, the world is 1/3 of the people on this earth are Christians. Over 2 billion people. The vast majority of them don't believe the Bible is the Word of God. Over half of them are Catholics, and they think the Pope is the Word of God. And another 200 million of them are Orthodox, and they think their prelates are the ones that are in charge. And the rest that use the Bible, so the Methodists don't see the Bible as the Word of God. They say it's inspired by God, and that it's that you need to be an inspired reader to read it. I think is true. There's only this small group, maybe 300 or 400 million people, that are in this not whole space of that the Bible is, quote, the Word of God, which, by the way, it doesn't say in the Bible any place. There's no place in the Bible where the word Bible appears. It was a bunch of books that were put together 300 years after the fact, so to speak, the New Testament, that is.
And then put together in several different orders
And
throughout
different
history.
orders and changed. And
Some
all
left
sorts
in,
of things.
some taken out, some put back in again.
So, what you need to know about God is in you. And yes, books like the Bible and other wisdom books have things in them that are really, really good. I can tell you the best of it. And I can also show you the worst of it. There's stuff that's in the Bible that if your minister read it to you in church, you would walk out. I'm not kidding you.
When we are calling for light for the Unity Church of Palm Harbor, should we be specific about what type of light and where?
You can be if you choose to be, but
Why limit God?
why not let God decide where the light is? It will happen. It's the focusing on the general idea, and the specifics will be shown. But if you're trying to manifest something specific in your life, it's okay to be specific, even more and more specific. We know, or at least I know, and maybe you can think about this, when I'm saying those words, let there be light, I'm seeing the outside light up. I'm not seeing where they're putting each light, but I'm just seeing it light up. Someone throwing a switch and it light up. So that's my view, but have your own view of it.
But remember, the affirmation is God as enlightenment. So God as wisdom is going to show this church how to light up, and we don't have to prescribe where, how, or when that's going to happen.
I once was told not to pray for patience, pray for strength. Now I have it also that it's important to be in a state of gratitude when we pray for manifestation.
In other words, she thinks she or he thinks they've been told several different things.
Okay. It's a joke among Unity ministers, never pray for patience. Because if you pray for patience, what is going to happen is mud.
And lots of opportunities to be patient.
Everything that's in you that creates impatience will come up. Now, in the long run, that's a good thing, but people are so shocked by it. I prayed for patience, and 50 people came to me that are all doing the things that upset me, of course. What did you expect? Rather than pray, patience is an art, a learned thing. Don't pray for patience. Pray for what you want. Pray for the kind of relationships, the kind of health, the kind of house, the kind of car, the kind of world that you want. And you'll get the patience to do it. I have tons of patience with the absolute nitty-gritty details of programming, and anyone who knew me would say, not him. But I love it.
And you never, ever get upset with them.
No. Those words that you hear me saying,
You're channeling someone else.
I'm channeling someone else when I'm saying it.
Now, I didn't read that particularly well, so let me just say, they said, now that I have that, it is also important to be in a state of gratitude when we pray for manifestation.
Okay, I do want to say something more about patience before we go on, because we'll go on to the next part of the question. A better concept than being patient with someone is to allow them. When you're being patient with someone, you're standing in judgment of them. They're not doing what you want, but you're standing back and tolerating it. That will never satisfy you, and it will never get you what you want. Allowing them to be who they are and detaching your need to have them be the way you want them to be will give you a great deal more peace. Because people are not going to be the way you want them to be unless you live in a world I've never been in. They're not going to do things the way you think they should. Not your children, not your parents, not your spouse, not your friends. They have this strange way of doing things that are different from mine. I just don't understand it.
Not us.
We actually couldn't be more different on about 99% of things than you can imagine. We approach things from entirely different points of view. But we're very allowing of each other, and we learn a lot from each other. When you're allowing somebody to be who they are, you really are open to some new information. When you're simply being patient, you're just waiting for them to get to do things your way, and it's never going to happen. Your stress level is going to be huge. So patience and peace are not they're not compatible words. Gratitude before manifestation, gratitude is simply one way of manifesting. There are lots of others. But if you like lollipops and someone gives you a lollipop and you say, I'm grateful for this lollipop, then God says, oh, she likes lollipops, we'll get her some more lollipops. So gratitude simply lets the universe know that you like what you have and therefore supplies you more of it. It isn't a requirement for manifestation, it's just one tool for manifestation.
When one doesn't achieve something in our lives, very important to us, is it perhaps something that is not best for us?
Probably what's not best for you is the anger, concern, or whatever is resulting from not achieving. That's really bad for you. No one, as I said, what Neil Donald Walsh said, no one's deciding what's right for you. No one is deciding that. There isn't some right for you. There's only choices. What's happening in this case is two opposing forces. What your conscious mind wants and what your subconscious mind believes. That's where that frustration is coming from. Either I decide not to do this, or I change my subconscious belief and I do it. You can do anything, but you've got to have agreement between the two minds. And the EFT and Psych-K both work on those type of things. You may want to fly, but you're afraid of flying. You have to get rid of the fear of flying. And the fact that you have a desire for something and a resistance, the resistance is always something in your belief system, and that's what needs to change. And if you don't know what it is, which most of us don't, you simply do this little prayer, say, God, I know there's something in me blocking me from getting this thing I want. I may be wanting to get it the wrong way. God, why don't you let me win the lottery? Well, okay, but what would you do if you won the lottery? Well, I'd buy a new house. Well, your object isn't to win the lottery. Your object is to buy a new one. Okay, how do I get a new house?
Let's talk about Sears Roebuck's drills again.
Oh, yeah. It was a number of years ago they did a survey about people buying drill bits. You know the drill bits that you drill with in your drill? Well, they found out that nobody wanted drill bits. Nobody did. They didn't want them. Do you want a drill bit? No. They found out what they wanted was holes. And you don't want money. You want what money can buy you, and focus on that, not the money itself. Money is just a tool.
If you're not getting what you want, chances are you are not expressing what you want. And of course, the most common and flamboyant example of that is falling in love with someone else's husband or wife. And you think, I really want that person. Well, that person isn't available to you. Someone who has that person's attributes that you happen to like is available to you if that's what you're praying for. But you can live your whole life longing for someone else's spouse or someone else's money or someone else's house or someone else's inheritance or someone else's whatever that you feel you've been cheated out of or didn't get or wish you had that you can't have. You're never going to manifest it that way. What you want to look at is what is there about that house, that amount of money in the inheritance, that silver tray, that man or woman that you really love, and begin to focus on wanting that, and you can have one too. There is no shortage in God's world of anything. You can have everything that anybody else has in form, but not necessarily that specific one. There's plenty of everything. It's a magnificent universe, and you can have what you want, but you need to be focusing on what it is that you want for you, not what it is that someone else has that you should have had, could have had, would have had, or would like to have. And most of the time, if you're not getting something you want, that's what it's all about.
What verbiage do you use, say it to yourself, to create, attract what you want? Example, I want a new job. Example, I want a better relationship with my son.
Well, and to me, it's not so much the verbiage as the vision. What do I want to do with my son? That would be fun. I want to go fishing with my son. I want to go traveling with my son. I want to sit down and have a quiet conversation with my son. I want to be able to share my grandchildren with my son. In other words, start thinking about what it is you want with that person. Or if I want money, what do I want money for? I want to go to Hawaii. I want a diamond ring. I want to go back to college. I want to support the AIDS Foundation. I want to contribute to my favorite candidate. What do you want the money for? I want to support my church. I want to put lights on the ground. What do you want? But what you want it takes some time. If you read the Abraham book, which we have recommended to you over and over and over again, Ask and It Is Given, it will suggest you do something like every day for 20 minutes, you sit in a workshop and think about what you want. Well, how do you know what to talk about in that workshop? All day long you begin collecting things. I love the pink blouse that person's wearing. I wish I had a dog like that. Isn't that a neat dog? Look at that car. First one I've seen that I really love in a long time. When you get in your workshop, you start thinking about those things. Because if you don't know what you want, if you just look around, it will become very obvious what you want.
Another thing is that you have to be very careful about wanting things with other people. You cannot want anything that was going to control them or change them or make them be the way you want. That is a waste of time. But say to yourself, let's say that you wanted to spend time fishing with your son. What would happen if I did go fishing with my son? What would it feel like to me? How would I feel? Think about how would I feel if this actually happened? Well, I would feel accepted. I would feel good. I would feel joyful. Think of those things and say, wait a minute. If you would feel accepted and you need your son to go fishing with you to be accepted, where's your lack?
And what do you want? You want to be accepted.
That's what you really want. And if you feel like you want to be accepted, it means that you are not accepting yourself. And once you feel accepted, your son will want to go fishing with you. You work on the feeling that you want to achieve if the event happened, and go towards that feeling. Manifest that feeling. Ask to be shown how to get that feeling. Get rid of the parts of your belief system that are not allowing you to have that feeling. And then the out picture works out by itself. But again, we're not working with the people and situations out there. We're not trying to control that. We're trying to influence the way we think, which influences the world.
And don't take him out on the boat just so once you get him out there, you can give him a piece of your mind. That's not what it's all about. And don't tell him how you just wish every weekend you could go fishing with him, because it could always be like this, because he'll never go fishing with you again. Just enjoy the moment.
Well, I think you've actually answered the next question, but here it goes. If you want to manifest winning a tight doubles tennis match, while you're playing, do you focus on winning each shot that you make, or also on the shot that your partner makes too?
Ask yourself, why do I want to win? What would happen if I did win? How would I feel? And focus on the feeling. And yes, don't focus on a shot that you want to win the game. Focus on making the very best shot of that type that's ever been made. Forget about the other team. You always work on what you are doing. See your partner, if you're doing with partners, as doing well, and if they don't, it doesn't matter. Because when the ball comes to you, you are going to make it, put it in the place where it needs to be. Always focus on what you are doing and getting it right, and don't worry about the other players and the other people, the opponents or your teammates. The better player you become, the better your teammates will become.
And if you want to really expedite it, focus on the party afterward to celebrate your winning. Leave the details to God about how the shot goes.
How do we take something positive away from a tragic situation?
I think the only way we could do that is to maybe give some specific examples of tragic situations. what is the most tragic situation you can think of? And the death of a loved one is one of the things that's like that. I think probably the most tragic is the loss of a child. And yet Lauren told you in her seminar several stories about people who'd lost children and who turned them into something good. If you are afraid of something, afraid of a loss, including a loss of your own life or a loss of the life of the other person, another person, you are living in fear. If you could get beyond your fear of death, and getting beyond your fear of death is, I've heard people say, oh, I'm not afraid to die, but boy, it'd be terrible if somebody I love died. You still have a fear of death. Death itself is what you're afraid of. You're afraid that it's going to hurt someone else. You're afraid that it's going to hurt you. Death is not a reality. You came into this planet. You already existed before you came into time-space. You already were there. Okay? You came in and manifested a body to wear like a suit through this corridor we call time. And the you that came in is still inside the suit. And when the you decides to drop the suit and walk out that last door we call death, you're still there. You're still there. And that's true not only of you, but the people you love. I'm not saying don't take care of your children and don't, should I let my infant walk on a wall that's a 20-foot drop? No, I wouldn't do that. Although I happen to know somebody who does.
Yeah, we do.
And child was
Lets
never
him
hurt.
have his own life experiences.
That's a little beyond where I am, but they did, and the child was never hurt. My point is that we can only be hurt in this. It's like Monopoly. You can lose a Monopoly game, but you don't really lose anything. You can lose your life, your physical life, but you don't really lose anything. Now that's a step. That's quite a ways away from where most people are. But just for a moment, think of what your life would be like if that's what you believed. What would you be afraid of? If that's what you actually believed at your core. I'm not saying you should believe that. I'm saying just think about it. Just think about it. What would my life be like if I knew I was eternal and I'm only here for a period of time. If you go into the football game, you may be knocked out of bounds. You may be put out of the game. It's not the end of your life, though. And neither is when you die the end of your life. And yeah, we want to stay in the game. We want to be here. We want to do the stuff. We came here to have this experience and to have fun doing it. And let's do it. And not be afraid of when it's ready for us to literally check out. It's like Hotel California. You can check out, but you definitely...
I'm going to shimmer out.
You're going to shimmer out? Okay, good. That's right.
As a minister, you get a chance to see really into people's lives. It's a very privileged position, and you really need to every day you are humbled by the fact that you have such entree into the way people think and feel and believe. And we had two couples with the same situation in the church where we were in, where the husband had been working for the same company for 30 years, ready to retire with all benefits. Company went bankrupt and all of his retirement was gone. All of the promises were gone. All of the security was gone. He was at an age where it was difficult to get work. There were no, everything they thought they had in a pension plan had kept them from having savings all these years. And so they were, 60 some odd years old and broke, two couples. One of them became bitter, lived frugally, were unhappy for the rest of their lives. The other one said, oh, well, this was not a good thing. And I am disappointed and I'm damn mad, as a matter of fact, that this happened to me. But I'm just going to take that and do something else with it. The husband and wife started a business together and did far better than they had ever done when he was working for an employer and wasn't particularly happy. Because in what they were doing, they were exceedingly happy. They were doing something they loved to do the first time they were working together, and they had a very happy retirement and made enough money to be very comfortable. Same situation. Neither couple had any advantage over the other, no more education, no more social standing, no more anything, just a different attitude toward life. So what you take away from a tragedy is not the question. What do I put into it? It was, who's the gentleman with the Crystal Cathedral? Robert Schuller
yeah.
said, don't ask why bad things happen to good people. Ask what happens to good people when bad things happen to them. It's a very profound question. And you have all the talent in the world to walk away from any tragedy and live a better life than you lived before, no matter what that tragedy is.
Can we skip emotional steps, or how many can we skip? Talking about the
I think-
scale.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Don't look at them like steps. I have to go from this one to this one. Those are, you might consider them as levels, if you will. And you can go to any level you want. If you are used to operating in lower levels, it's very hard to get up to a high level, and even harder to stay up there. But every time you move up a little higher, you're going to come back down, and you're going to move up. But gradually, you'll keep moving up, and your average will move up. Those are levels, and you're always trying to get a little bit higher, not to the top level, just getting my state of mind in a little bit better shape.
You know, depression, any step up is better. Somebody who's depressed who gets mad, Abraham says, your family loved you better when you were depressed because you just stayed in your room and didn't cause any trouble. When you start to get mad, now you're out stirring stuff up. And you just tell them to just sit tight and wait till you get to frustration. You just can't wait to get there. So the object is to applaud yourself on any step you make, and yes, sometimes you catapult up 3 or 4. You just very seldom, in fact never, go from misery to joy in one step. That just isn't going to happen.
Many people who have made great advances in human knowledge that has led to improvement in the human condition have had trouble in their personal life due to the dedication they gave their work. They seem to make a great contribution by sacrificing their own personal life. How did they achieve so much without the spiritual balance?
Whatever you focus on, you'll get. Let's take a person who, the story about Scrooge is the best one in the world. All of his energy, everything he did was to make money. And guess what? He did. But he did it to the exclusion of everything else in his life. And then he got to a certain point where the ghost represents sort of his waking up, where he said, what good is all this money? When I die, it's gone. I devoted my life to something that has no meaning. And so he shifted his energy. And yes, there are lots of people who focused their whole inventors. There was nothing but what they did. Thomas Edison, I think he slept 1 hour a night and focused on so many things and made so many inventions. But that's what he wanted to do. And that's okay. He didn't have to be a good family man, although he was a reasonable one at that. He had a wife and sons. Once when his whole plant was burning down, a huge fire, he called his son and said, go get your mother. I want her to see this. You'll never see anything like this again. And he just thought it was another way to start. It's an attitude. People who sacrifice, quote, or focus to the exclusion of everything else are doing that because that's what they choose. You don't have to do that. And yes, maybe some of the things that they did advance. Was it Van Gogh who cut his ear off to get his paintings noticed? And he had nothing during his life, and now he's so great.
I think he was a little misguided.
I know that's kind of an eerie topic, but I'm not going to.
That would have made more sense if he was a musician or something. I never did quite get that. I'm sure I will.
Don't judge what other people have done by your own standards, and you don't have to do that. There are millions and millions of ways you could live this life. And if they want to do that, that's fine. If they want to devote all their time to making money or painting postcards, whatever it is that they want to do, that's okay. You don't have to do that. What you need to decide is, what do I want to do with this time I've got here? What do I want to do with this life energy? And do that. And don't worry about what other people are doing or not doing. Even if they're your children or your parents. Doesn't matter.
I keep thinking about Charlie Creighton. Charlie Creighton is a man that John and I knew separately. He lived in Fort Lauderdale at one time. I lived in Fort Lauderdale another. We both knew Charlie Creighton. He ran Creighton's Restaurant, which was a fine dining restaurant, elegant. But Charlie had started his career somewhere in Atlanta in a restaurant called Granny's Pantry or Annie's Pantry or something. And when he was a young kid, he got caught in the meat slicer and he cut off 3 fingers. And he said, you know, when it happened, I thought it was a tragedy. And in a few months, I realized I didn't need the damn things anyway. And he became a multi-millionaire. So I think the best contemporary example...
That was the best hamburger that was ever made.
I think the best contemporary example is probably Stephen Hawking, who's gotten down, he wanted to live using his mind, and his body became totally disabled, totally unable to function physically at all, but can spend all his time living out of his mind, is now the smartest man in the world at this time, according to the experts.
He has gone so far into physics, farther than anybody else. He's more than the Einstein of our time, and he can't speak. He
can't speak, he can't move. Just got married a while ago.
To his nurse. He needed it. And you know, he
is
has
that like cutting off your ear? I don't.
And one of the things he said in his early... What else did he cut off?
I think it's time to end this conversation.
Why are we going to edit this out?
Next week we're doing joy. We're too early for it. Do we have more questions?
Well, I was gonna add my own. Now, does that mean, go back to the question, does that mean like, say, Jesus, does that mean Jesus felt like his work was done, so he consciously decided it was time to check out?
No, it meant that his contemporaries were really dumb. Really, it did. And they were... If Jesus came back today, he'd be crucified again. We haven't moved up that much. If he came and told the churches that everything they were teaching was wrong, they would find a way to get rid of him. And you know, of course, they wouldn't crucify him. Now they'd call him. They would say he was unpatriotic, and they would try him for treason. And they couldn't crucify him. They would put him in the electric chair. We'd all be wearing little electric chairs around our neck.
But then that's another whole talk.
That's another talk.
You know, he went off for 40 days, they say. You know, who knows what he did, but the story is he went off for 40 days to decide whether he would accept this fate or not. The theory, the implication is that he could have changed the ending of the story if he'd chosen to. But the lesson was better learned. He perhaps had. I mean, truth, there's only so much truth. 3 years is plenty of time to teach it. So if anybody listened, they got it all. If you only did what's in the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament for the rest of your life, you'd be fine. You wouldn't have to attend another seminar or listen to another tape. Just do everything he said. Turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, do all those great things. So, you know, he just decided to let it be.
What made him, quote, the Son of God is the Bible writers 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 years later, not him. That was not his attitude. He was a teacher. He is not different than us. And the making him separate and different than us negates what he taught. His death was not a sacrifice to God for our sins. That's the most ridiculous piece of theology in the world. He never said anything like that.
For one thing, he knew we'd think up sins that hadn't been committed yet.
That's true. He came as a teacher, and his lesson disturbed too many people. It disturbed the religious establishment, and it disturbed the government. They didn't care about what he taught religious-wise. They didn't give a darn. The Romans just wanted to keep peace. But when it looked like he was drawing big crowds and he might be a rebel, and when the Sanhedrin came to him and said, "This guy's making revolution," they got rid of him in a hurry. The story in John about Pontius Pilate wiping his hands and I have nothing to do with that is a load of, Harry Truman would have called it manure.
No, fertilizer.
No,
manure, that's right.
And someone said, Harry said something about someone saying stuff in Congress was a load of manure, and a friend of Margaret's Beth said, "Can't you get him to use a different word, fertilizer?" She said, "You don't know how hard it was to get him to use manure." Pontius Pilate was the most vicious governor in the Roman Empire. He was put in this hellhole called Jerusalem. Nobody wanted to go there because, as a punishment, He was so bad. The Roman records about Pontius Pilate show that he would have killed anybody in a second just for being there. He was chastised by his own government for being too brutal. So this idea of him washing his hands is pure, what would we be calling it?
Manure.
Manure, yeah.
Fertilizer.
Fertilizer, yeah.
Do you think by any chance that what Jesus was saying that nobody liked was, yes, we can?
Yeah, it might have been. It might have been. It was a, he turned the law on its head. The Jews lived by law, the Torah. And he said things like, when he was accused of breaking the Sabbath, he said, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Sabbath's supposed to be when we rest. It's not to be holy. It's not for God. It's for men. This is a vacation we're supposed to get once every 7 days.
Well, how come we don't give these folks Sunday off?
We will. By the way, the Sabbath is Saturday, too. Now, that's another little thing. It's not Sunday.
What do you think, to answer your own question?
Well, I mean, if the implication is we're creating our own lives, which I definitely believe, then Jesus or any other enlightened being who they created the situation in which their life was taken. And that's why I say I think that he felt like the work he came to do was taken as far as he could take at that time, and it was time to go.
Considering the consciousness of the planet at the time, I think so, and since he knew death was no big thing, why?
I don't think
Why
he was
not?
afraid to die at all, but death was not his purpose.
Is that it? Is that the end
That's
of the
it.
questions? Okay, well, it is, we ran a little bit, 10 minutes over,
Yeah.
so they'll have to edit out all your political stuff.
Yeah.